Well, the first thing I would say is treat it like a job. It's a very romantic existence. There's the idea of being a poet, being a writer, but you have to treat it like a job. You have to write every day. You have to read everything. I started, like I said, as a formal poet. I focused on modern poetry and modern theory, where it's about precision in the language and in these ideas. I mean, then I went on to reading Whitman and the Bible, and I extended my lines, and I was a little less frugal with my word choice, And but I mean, it's the thing of you have to treat it like a job, and you have to read. And I mean, if you want to teach, that's pretty much very few people make it just off their writing.
Well, that's two areas, though. I mean, that's a generality about what you got to do, and of course you got to treat it like a job. But
Right.
How do they pursue their publishing? How do they pursue a teaching job?
Okay. Well, you don't necessarily. I mean, William Carlos Williams was a doctor,
Right.
and Wallace Stevens was a lawyer, so you can do both.
Right.
It's just difficult, I think, for people because
Just Elliot was a banker,
Yeah, I think it's difficult if you do a 9-to-5 job and then come home and you're gonna, you have a wife, kid, or a husband, you have kids, and okay, now I'm gonna go bang out a poem, work for 3 hours. That's, I mean, that may be a little difficult on your family life. But I mean, again, but to be successful as a poet, I mean, you have to send out, you have to try to publish, read, not be afraid to read, and conferences. I mean, there's a lot of business aspects to this. I would suggest reaching out to other poets in the general area, in the surrounding area, across the country. You'd be surprised the amount of people that will email you back and will talk to you and meet you. And, I mean, it's important to have a mentor. I mean, letters to a young poet. I mean, what is that? A guy sends his thing out to Rilke, and they have this correspondence, I mean, Emily Dickinson wouldn't have got her poems published, not as extensively as they were. She didn't have a mentorship, so.
Yeah, those are good tips. And how about the teaching thing? Now, that's a tough one these days.
Right now the state of education is in a difficult, but by the time you guys get through and you go to school and work on a master's and possibly a PhD, or I have a BA in English and an MFA in poetry. It's a terminal degree, so I can teach at the university level. So, that's one way. You got to teach, you got to tutor, it's publish. It's all those,
Yeah, the reason why I asked all this for you is because I know you're interested in writing, but I remember when I was your age, it's all sort of vague, right? I mean, you're not quite, what do I do? Do I do anything? Maybe if I write, somebody will discover me. Yeah. I just throw it in a drawer and someone will discover me somehow, It ain't that way.
No, it's not at all. I was just like that not that long ago.
Yeah.
And I was kind of discovered that's not the way it works.
That's usually the way that's usually the way people think of it.
Yeah,
They all start out that way.
Then reality hits you and you're like, oh, if I really am taking this serious, if I really believe in poetry and my writing, you have to be aggressive and you have to be proactive.
Well, it's your turn to ask the tough questions, or any question. You don't have to be scathing. You don't have to beat up on him. I know you like him. He's a likable guy. So, how'd you like his poem?
I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What'd you like about it?
I liked that, again, that you felt like you were there seeing it all, and you just felt everything that they were feeling.
Thank you.
I don't know. I liked it a lot because I don't know. I could almost like feel what you were feeling, just the way you just the way you wrote it. Just like you went really. I think you went kind of like really in depth, and you just took us like to the shipyard, and like you introduced us to Lucy, and just like I don't know. It was just like I feel like I was watching, or not watching, but like like I feel like I was there.
Part of the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It was interesting when you sent me that poem. Remember, you said you had to work on it some more because you wanted it to be really polished, and
right?
Because you normally just throw dash things out or something. I don't quite understand.
No, it's not that.
What you were saying.
That was the poem was fun, and I didn't even work on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't change it.
Yeah.
Again, what I've been doing lately is longer lines.
Oh.
So it's in a much more lyrical flow.
Okay.
And so, like, what my poetry's, I have a poem that I just wrote. It's called "Life is a Wild Emotion Lying in the Grass." So it's these very long lines, and I mean, they almost take up the whole. So it's like, I look back, and that's an older poem, and I have put it away, and you know, I mean, it's, and I was putting it for contests, and so, but like, you know, when you look back at some of your other work, sometimes you're like, oh man, maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that.
Right.
And that's an important skill, to be able to just put something away.
So that's what you were talking about.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, okay, you're not quite sure yet about this, that, or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a definite evolution in my voice, and it's moving towards something else. Again, that's much more heavily modernist, and influenced by modernism. You know, T.S. Eliot, Gerard Manley Hopkins, Pound, Wallace Stevens. I mean,
quite a range. I mean,
yeah.
the voices.
Yeah, well,
You say it's moving towards that, but they're so different.
well, see, that's where I was started. And
Yeah.
I read all of those, you know, and I mean, there's certain things, that voice, they have a large voice. I try to write with this certain amount of that, but at the same time with vulnerability.
Okay, I
You
got
know?
it.
So, I mean, and that's that kind of modernist, at least what I take out of those writers.
You know, as you were talking just now, I suddenly thought of somebody that your poem, that poem, the one you just read, reminds me of Lee Poe. You know Lee Poe?
Oh, who Pound,
River Merchant's Wife, for
yeah,
example,
Yeah.
which is a very tender poem about, by, you know, the voice of a woman, you know, waiting for her merchant husband to come home. You know,
Yeah, I know that poem.
that seems to be the personal sort of voice you're striving for, achieving.
Yeah.
Seems very close.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Levine as well. There's a lot of work poems and that type of, you know, there's
What work is.
And I mean, those are strong poems, but there's tenderness in them.
Right.
You know,
I see where
there's
you're going.
vulnerability, there's
I see
strength.
where you're
It's,
going.
you know, it's a
Huh.
coalescence of those two. I mean, those are difficult to kind of put together, but that's one of the things I do try to do in my poetry. You know, sometimes successfully, sometimes not so much. But those
How much of the Chinese poetry have you read?
I've read. I took a class at San Diego State, and it was in like foreign and translation in poetry, and we spent quite a long time on haiku, and then I've also read. I think that's Japanese Ogenji. I've read that, and you know, I mean, those are almost like a journal, and then with little haikus or little poems stuck in between.